Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton and the one and only Kevin L. Jackson here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Kevin, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. We just had another thunderstorm come through here in Northern Virginia. That's, 4 days in a row, right on time.
I tell you what, hey, welcome to
But
May and June
yeah, it
and
must
the
be
weather
summer.
across. It's been something else. That's right. It's hard to believe summer's already here. But, all that
Yeah.
aside, it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. I'm not sure where this came from, but everybody talks about the weather and no one does anything about it. But
What can you do?
what can you do, right? We'll save that for another episode. But hey, Kevin, today we got a great show teed up. We're going to be talking with a business leader that's helping to lead digital transformation at a company that was
Yes.
founded almost 100 years ago in Augusta, Georgia, a company that offers a wide portfolio of products, all powering its growth across some 150 plus locations all around the world. So stay tuned for an informative, enlightening, and entertaining conversation. Kevin, should be a good one, huh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Think about the change that a company over 100 years old have to deal with. Talk about change management. Wow, they must be good at
Real good. Well, we're going to get a glimpse into how the digital transformation behind some of the change that they are empowering here momentarily.
it.
So,
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm going to introduce our distinguished guest here today. Looking forward to learning from Roshan Shah, Vice President of Applied AI and Products at Georgia Pacific, where he's worked for almost 7 years. Now, in this role, he's responsible for helping the organization create value through data and artificial intelligence. He's got a background in applying machine learning across various industries over the last 15 years, and he brings all of that wealth of experience to his position here. Now, previously, Roshan spent several years working at CSX Transportation in the railroad industry. I bet that's a fascinating chapter of
Hmm.
his journey. He also holds a bachelor's degree in statistics from the University of Florida, go Gators, and an MBA from Duke University, home to Blue Devils. Roshan, welcome, welcome. Great to see you here today.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me here.
You bet,
Oh
you bet.
no. Yeah,
Kevin,
literally love your title, Applied Artificial Intelligence. No theoretical stuff here. I'm making it work.
That's
no
right.
time for lip service, right? No time for lip service. Action outcomes, and we're going to be getting into some of that today. Hey, before we get into a lot of all things AI and digital transformation, I got a couple of quick questions for you, Roshan. I got to start with collegiate sports. Do your allegiances lie with the Gators, or do they lie with the Blue Devils?
That's a that's a hot topic in my household. With the SEC and ACC part of families kind of coming together. But
Right.
I stick with my Florida Gators.
Okay, that was my hunch.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So, and then secondly, Kevin, we did a little due diligence, a little homework on
Uh-huh.
Roshan, and we have come to uncover that when he's not doing big things across at GP with digital transformation, and when he's not fathering his two kids, which I think are really
Mhm.
young, under 4 years old, I believe, he likes to golf and woodwork. So, Kevin, question for Roshan, and then we'll come to you maybe. Roshan, what's been one of what's been one of your proudest accomplishments here recently when it comes to golfing or woodworking?
Uh, you know, that's a tough one in the sense that there's a lot of efforts in play. I'm not entirely sure that there's a lot of results, but if I had to pick one, I would say, a couple years ago, we had to take a couple of trees down in our backyard, and they were white oak trees. So we took them down and we kind of let it dry. I actually took it to a kiln, and long story short, I ended up building a kind of a kitchen table out of the trees in my
Oh,
backyard.
wow.
So and that's the table that we kind of break bread on, right, with my family, and the kids kind of jump on it. There's generally things spilled, crayons, everything, and the table's kind of held up for about 18
Dirty
months.
though.
So yeah, so it's just kind of seeing that life cycle, of something go from my backyard and spending about 6 months worth of kind of time working on it, and then my family get to enjoy it. It's just, it's pretty awesome to see all that.
Oh,
Oh
Roshan, I
yeah.
love that, and I love the character that your and experiences that your table has enjoyed over the last 18 months. We have a very similar story in our family with my father-in-law Fred Midkiff built us a table we've been eating on, breaking bread on for years now. So that really relates to our experience as well. Kevin, so woodworking, golfing, how Roshan built the table that he and his family break bread on. What stood out to you there?
Well, first of all, that's impressive building that table because the high point of my woodworking experience is pine wood derby cars with my son, like over 30 years ago. So I'm not a woodworker. So I'm going to stick with the golf because I also had great fun in golfing with both of my sons, who are golfers. I'm just out there to go pick up the balls out of the woods.
And have a few adult beverages if you're getting by a
Yes,
golf cart. Love that, Kevin. And one last comment about Roshan, what you were sharing. I hate to see, especially any tree go down, but old, new, you name it. And to be able to take that instead of discarding it to make something of such value, I can see now why maybe I should get into woodworking. Although, other
mm.
than hammering a nail, I'm not sure if I have any skills that apply Roshan and Kevin, but we'll save that for a later episode, perhaps. Um, we got a lot to get into here today, Roshan and Kevin, a ton of stuff.
Mhm.
And context is so important. We can't get enough context in this world. And that's where I want to start. For the handful of viewers out there across our global audience that may be unfamiliar with Georgia Pacific, tell us a little more about the company, including any details that you can around the supply chain organization or footprint.
Sure. So, Georgia Pacific, privately owned company, a subsidiary of Koch Industries, um,
Mm.
primarily, kind of three distinct businesses that form Georgia Pacific. I think you mentioned early on, it's a, organization that's been around for a couple of decades now, and we throughout time we worked on creating value for the communities that we operate in, and thereby earn an ability to kind of coexist, right? Um, in that regard, you'll see quite a few brands that are part of the Georgia Pacific family that are actually in everyday um, households, right? So if you
Mm.
consider the fact that there's about 65% of the American households that consume something coming out of our organization, and there is 40% of our products, right, or 40% of the products that we make, they're in U.S. businesses. So it's a household name, I think, and part of that you'd recognize Brawny, right? That's the paper towel
Yeah.
that you buy, or Dixie, Quilted Northern, right? So those are some of our brands, Angel Soft. Those are some of the retail brands. We also have a lot of presence in private label, uh, side of side of the world in the CPG space. And if you think about our second business unit being building products, this is where you have gypsum, wallboard. You'd also
Mm.
see a lot of plywood, lumber, OSB. Similarly, if you go over to kind of our third business unit, packaging and cellulose, this is where you'd have a lot of kind of the fluff pulp that goes into materials that end up soaking things, right? So whether that be feminine hygiene products or like diapers, right?
Mhm.
um,
Oh, okay.
Container board, this is where we make the paper that goes into making boxes that, so if you buy something on, say, Amazon, for example, and when something shows up in that brown box, we make a lot of the paper that goes into making that box and the box itself, along with a whole host of products. But so long way of saying, privately owned company, been around for quite some time, and we exist in quite a few households that you may or may not recognize, but it's certainly a household brand.
I love that. And Kevin, I tell you, I've got three kids of my own, and I go through so much brawny, because all they do is make mess, and they're home for the summer these days. We got stuff spilled all over our table everywhere. So I'm a big consumer, a big customer of GP, at least one of your divisions there. Kevin, as you kind of heard him unpack, especially the CPG, the construction,
Yeah.
and of course the packaging divisions, what comes to your mind there?
Well, it really comes to the top of my mind is the contact with the consumer, right? I mean, their products are in the household, in every part of the household, and touch every part of your body. Talk about being close. I
Right.
mean, and you don't even know where it comes from. It's such a huge part of our lives. 65% of American households, really? I mean, wow.
We're to your point, Kevin. Although uh, globally, consumers learned a ton more about global supply chain and manufacturing and other different
Mhm.
aspects that go into the industry since the pandemic. We got a lot more to go, to your point, because I think all of us, even if we've been in industry, don't appreciate where things come from that we interact with or use every single day. So that's a great point,
Yeah, I
Kevin.
know we're going to talk more about this, but it's also important to recognize that this company is a part of the global sustainability movement and they
That's right.
bear a big role. And I'm anxious to learn more about what the GP does for sustainability.
Oh, we're going to be talking that in the second half of today's conversation, including some outcomes that Roshan and his team are driving. But let's do this. Again, more context. So, Roshan, let's learn a little bit more about your role and what your team does as you're powering gains and efficiencies and digital transformation across the enterprise.
Sure. So Scott, in my role, I wear a couple of hats, but I have the privilege of working with some of the smartest group of folks that I've ever worked with, and these folks look at a lot of the data that our manufacturing plants produce, that our businesses produce, and we look for patterns, anomalies, things that we can analyze at large volume, at large scale, that primarily helps us, you know, produce things cheaper, faster, easier, have less impact on the environment, and we do that through a very large scale. So on a day-to-day basis, we consume, or we rather analyze about 2 trillion records of data that, data that gets generated from about 500,000 sensors that are constantly sending us data. Now we apply machine learning models, artificial intelligence on top of that data to figure out what's wrong, when is it going to go bad, how much time do we have, and what should we do about it. And through collaboration with the engineering team, through the teams that we have, our corporate headquarter teams, and at the facilities, of course, most importantly, working across the board to look at the output of that model and bring in the human element of, well, what should we do about it, and taking a risk-based approach to figuring out what should we do so we can have the least amount of downtime, least amount of waste, most optimal production quality and quantity as we can given the kind of market conditions. And that's at a high level kind of my role in helping make that successful. And we,
Mm.
as I mentioned, quite a heavy reliance on data and knowledge that we can gain through the use of large language models and a lot of human element in this.
Love that. So, Kevin, going
Hmm.
back to the first part of Roshan's response there, 2 trillion records from 500,000 sensors. And I think that was daily analysis, Roshan, if I got that right, right?
Correct.
So, when I think about technology and the human factor and how they complement each other,
Yeah.
when I was in the Air Force, Kevin, part of my role 20 some odd years ago was reviewing records, right, and making sure, looking for data integrity as we were performing a variety of actions on the fleet, right? So a good day for me was probably a couple hundred, as I recall back, that was a long time ago, probably a couple hundred records, right? As I had my TO and I was going through
Yeah.
with my red
Yeah.
pencil, a couple hundred records. And it just brings to mind and listen to Roshan explain that, how we have to, it's not even an option. We got to lean into innovative technology so we can get a lot more done every single day. 2 trillion records from 500,000 sensors. Your thoughts there, Kevin?
Well, I'm sure you never hit a trillion,
Ouch.
but the thing that really jumped out at me was they have to leverage the machine learning models and artificial intelligence to manage and review all of these records, and more importantly, make important decisions based upon the marketplace, the goals of the organization, and what the customers want. That's 65% of the marketplace, and and I wonder how do you do that? Because one of the key aspects of any business is governance, and it's been for a long time, companies have been trying to deal with governance of data, just the data by itself. But now you're putting another layer on top of that with respect to not just governing and managing the data, but managing and the governance of the machine learning models and the artificial intelligence models that you're using to glean insight from that data. So how do you do that? How do you apply this governance uh, to this advanced technology?
That's a really good question, Kevin. It's a challenge, right? But
Hmm.
it's worth the risk, and the reward's worth the risk, right? Let me come at it this way.
Okay.
You know what we've noticed over the last 5 years that we've kind of been working in this area is when we are able to consume these massive amounts of data, apply
Hmm.
models, and then put the output of the models in front of people, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about how do you help somebody make a better decision. And when folks are able to make better decisions that impacts them, personally and professionally, I think
Hmm.
there is a level of connectivity, a level of ownership that folks feel. So consider this. If you have a failure in the middle of the night while a plant is running, you might get a phone call, or you might be repairing something that is kind of dark. It's a little dangerous, right? But
Yeah.
through the lens of data, AI, and humans kind of being in the loop there, if we are able to help avoid an unplanned event in the middle of the night, that doesn't require somebody to kind of go and take an unnecessary risk rather, then that kind of humanizes things. That drives adoption, and that's been something that we've noticed occurring consistently over the last couple of
Yeah.
years. And I mean, I can share that if I look back 5 years ago where our unplanned events were to where we are today, I mean, we have 30% less, at least less unplanned events that
Hmm.
we used to. So that comes through the lens of data and AI, and you know and helping our colleagues in the facilities appropriately assume the right risk. Then second piece to your direct question around the governance side of things. At the end of the day, we're applying data and model against censored data, right? So if
Hmm.
you think about there's math that learns from it, and there's always somebody at the end of it to look at the output of that
Hmm.
model and then do something with it. So governance is kind of inherently baked into that, right? Where people with good intentions and principled entrepreneurs, they're going to make the right decisions that they kind of demonstrate that over time. And what we've noticed is, you know, the output of these models, these data that, facts that these things show, that when folks are able to consume that, it impacts them positively. I think there is a large sense of ownership and pride in doing the right thing with what the model is doing. So, very long-winded way of saying kind of that governance is distributed in that regard
Yeah.
to the end users, and it's embedded in how they consume the output of things. And it's been quite uh, a privilege from my standpoint to be able to see that organic and that natural adoption of the output, and that kind of that governance just kind of gets baked in, so to speak.
Wow. I really like what you're saying there. The fact that the machine learning models and the artificial intelligence is actually benefiting the humans, not
Correct.
only in making things safer, but improving their work environment
Yeah.
and improving their productivity. So
That's right.
they're working together. It's not this, no, AI is going to take my job away. No, AI is enhancing your job. You're using humans for what they're good for, and that's their brain, their
Yeah.
thinking, their foresight, their
Absolutely.
decision making.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'll give you one example. Just in the last last couple of days,
Hmm.
I've been part of two phone calls where, you know, folks who are consumers of the output of these models, they picked up the phone and called us and say, "Hey, you guys missed X, Y, and Z." And what's really interesting is the things that we missed, and these folks are not bringing that to us through the lens of, well, you guys are not worth anything and you're missing all these,
Right.
but they're kind of giving us this feedback that says, hey, you missed this, can you go and tweak your model so we don't miss it next time and we can
Love
all
it.
be in the same page. It's just kind of that level of ownership. Like, we're not pushing it, right? It's kind of folks
Hmm.
are pulling on it, and that to me sends a message that when folks know that this is kind of AI, there are a lot of folks who want to participate in it, want to own it, and drive that for everybody's
Hmm.
betterment versus, to your point, purely looking at it as a threat.
Yeah. All right. I got
It's
to
a
jump in
tool.
here. Yeah. It is. It is. It's. It's many things as I'm hearing Roshan describe it, but um, Kevin, I think you were alluding to kind of my main thought is the profound impact that Roshan and his team are having on the business is from decision making to the 30% less unplanned events. I can just hear
Hmm.
friction and disruption coming out of the enterprise. But what's most important to me, which is what you centered your response around, Roshan, and that's the quality of life for your team members and enabling them to find more success the next go round and having their back to do that. That is a beautiful application of technology.
Yeah.
So you've made our day here today, Roshan. Okay, I wish we had a couple more hours with you here today, but I want to move along to a very specific area of impact on the business that you're seeing, especially given your some of your previous experience in demand planning, and then we're going to get into some of the bigger picture key pillars of overall digital transformation at the organization. So let's start with you. You spent a big, at least a chapter of your journey involved in demand planning. How do you see analytics and AI transforming that long running component of global supply chain, Roshan?
I think it's key to it. From my seat on the bus, what I notice is there's a lot of fluctuations, right? Whether that be from a geopolitical standpoint, whether that be from a weather standpoint, there's a lot of fluctuations that if we are not able to kind of notice that early on and react to it, right,
Hmm.
as quickly as we can, through the help of machine learning models, etc., then downstream, that effect, by the time it reaches to the end consumers, it's 2x worse. Whether that
Hmm.
comes through the lens of, well, there's not enough products, or there's not enough, not enough for everybody, not at the right place. Costs are going kind of out of control, and all kinds of things. So it is extraordinarily important for us. We recognize the value in being able to make demand planning as predictable as possible. Now, that's kind of easier said than done, of course, and we're a lot of scars on that, and a lot of work ahead of us still. But we recognize that's a very integral component of what we as an organization need to be good at.
Yeah, and I bet a lot of gains there too. You're being pretty humble, but with all of what you're analyzing every day and kind of feeding that, like the Mississippi River, into the demand planning processes, I can only imagine the gains you've made. Kevin, what you hear there? More predictability certainly is always a good thing. Your thoughts, Kevin?
Well, I mean, it really comes back to two-way communication between the production line and the customers that are receiving those products. That sensitivity to, I guess, the butterfly effect across the manufacturing process, the value chain there. You know, you're right. If something small happens on the manufacturing floor, it could be a big, huge impact to the end consumer. I really appreciate that attention to detail.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I bet your response made me think of, Kevin, something also we spoke about earlier today. Is my hunch is, even though Roshan didn't say it directly, is that they're able to be more customer centric and be able to listen to a lot more
Mm,
feedback and act on it based on how they're leveraging technology here.
right, right.
Um, all right, so let's go broader, Roshan and Kevin. When you
Hmm.
think of the overall digital transformation strategy at Georgia Pacific, what are some of the key pillars, Roshan, you can share with us?
You know, we think of the problems to be solved through the lens of transformation, right? Ones that are kind of not just from a profitability standpoint, but also we have the privilege of operating in the communities that we do and kind of bringing value to our customers. So we've got to think through the lens of, well, what do they care about, right? And working back from that, whether that be from a value standpoint of on time, in full, or whether that be through the lens of predictable outcome, as we talked about. When I work back from those those problems, the things that we care about is reducing our unplanned events, right? Helping our operators and kind of our colleagues in facilities have access to as updated and easy information as possible. This is where generative AI comes in quite heavily. We also think through the lens of and a big priority for us is um, operating safely, right? So I'll give you a
Mm,
couple of examples in that regard. We're working pretty hard to take all of the sensor data, and all the data that we can get um, from machines that, IoT sensor data, to be able to apply machine learning models on it and say, hey, are some of those trending in the wrong direction that would inherently expose somebody to an unnecessary risk, right? So say if a temperature is going in a direction that we don't want it to, we have the ability to see that, and we do our level best to be able to kind of predict that and then get ahead of that before it becomes something that somebody has to react to in a unsafe manner, right? So those are kind of the use cases that we're working on. As we think about that, it it necessitates that we have a flexible and a cost efficient cloud strategy, right? This is where we partner
yeah.
very heavily with AWS. We also need to be able to compile all of that data into environment that we can easily manipulate. So this is where again AWS comes in very heavily with Elastic Cloud Compute and other services that we get from these cloud providers. But all of that is like the data, the cloud, the computing, all of that are technology, but that has to come through the lens of, well, how is that improving, making it easier for our our teammates to be able to do something easier, right? That's where it really has to come to. Otherwise, transformation for transformation's sake, if it's not really kind of improving somebody's life, then A, there's relatively less adoption, but B, I mean, what's the point, right? So
Right.
we look at it through the
Mm.
lens of making it easier, faster, less waste, and that's been kind of our big priority and goal.
I love it. Roshan, Kevin, I'll give you a chance to respond to his answer there first.
Yeah. So the way you brought in AWS as your partner in managing data, I think it's critical. It's important because it's only through the use of cloud based technologies can you efficiently analyze all the data that comes from the sensors so that you can improve your own business processes. But at another level, maybe a more important level, Georgia Pacific is really a steward of our natural resources, global natural resources. And you're using the power of data, the power of the cloud to, you know, champion the preservation, efficient use. of our natural resources. And
Mm.
that link is actually not highlighted in a lot of, I guess, arenas.
Yeah. Well said. And Kevin, I'm not sure if your nickname should be Mr. Digital Transformer or Mr. Cloud, but we'll debate that after today's episode. Roshan, you've kind of sprinkled in successes and real palpable outcomes from your digital transformation efforts at Georgia Pacific. From one of my favorites is what you were just talking about a second ago, applying in a predictive manner to lessen safety incidents and lessen non-safe environments. I love that. Anything,
Hmm.
protecting the workforce, enabling and empowering the workforce. I love those applications. We talked about unplanned events. We've talked about decision making. Kevin touched on sustainability, which we're going to touch on in a second. Anything else before we move on to maybe something that didn't work out like you had it planned and maybe what you learned from that? Any other big success you want to highlight before we move forward, Roshan?
Um, I think again we've been fortunate that we work for a company that is kind of leaning forward in terms of transforming, thinking about
Hmm.
the application of technology to help improve lives. I personally think I'm quite fortunate to have had that luxury. In that regard, I could probably talk a couple different ones where it's worked out pretty well for us. The one that I think that I'm pretty excited about as we dive into this new world of generative AI. Now, of course, that's all the buzz these days, and there's a lot of hype around that for sure.
Right.
But where I think we've been able to apply that, it's early, right? But we've been able to apply kind of our data, the documents, the numbers, the pictures, all what have you, in a manner that before a machine operator knows to ask a question, we're
Hmm.
able to predict what's occurring on that machine and then be able to not just call an operator and say, hey, you got this problem. I think the last thing an operator needs to know is that they've got 51 problems and now there's a 52nd. For us, the effort has been how do we combine our data and power generative AI and everything, and then be able to surface to this operator, right, or our subject matter expert that says, "Hey, it seems the sensors are telling me this is a problem based on the generative AI output. I believe the causes and the solutions could be this." And packaging all of that information along with the pictures and videos and just making it really easy for an operator to
Mm,
recognize that this problem is about to incur. You may want to consider doing XYZ. Historically, someone else tried ABC, and there's a high probability that that will work. In other words, you've kind of given somebody a, a lead time to react
mm.
versus just reacting to a stimulus. I think that's something that we're pretty excited about, and that's we're going to keep working on that to see how we can improve that.
Love it, Roshan. And Kevin, right before I get your response, I love the cultural win there because
Yeah.
those operators, those folks out in the plant see you as allies. They don't see you as looking over their shoulder. They see you as allies to help make them more successful every day and safer every day and give them a heightened quality of life. Kevin, what'd you hear there?
Well, they make it an important aspect packaging the data so that it is consumable by everyone that's responsible. Don't give me a huge spreadsheet with numbers that I have to manipulate. Give me a picture that I can see what's happening. Relate it, make it relevant to what I do every day. So I think that's important, and that also is part of the culture of the organization. I always say digital transformation is really more about communications and being able to communicate the value and insights of data to everyone that data touches. And I love how you are focused on that communications.
Yep. Well said, Kevin. Well said. So Roshan, we've spoken a lot of the gains y'all have made. We got to keep it real because my hunch is y'all value experimentation, and every experiment doesn't exactly work out like you had planned, and that's good because we learn from those opportunities, right? So, is there anything you can share without getting where the bodies are buried or any skeletons in the closet? Is there anything? Is there an issue
Bro,
that
getting you
didn't?
fired.
That's right. Is there anything you can share related to something that maybe didn't work like you hoped it had, and any lessons you applied from it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, that list is fairly long of all the mistakes. I'm not sure if
For
we could even.
everybody out there, right?
I'm not sure if we could even count at this point, to be honest with you. But one there's a theme. Early on as we kind of jumped into this is whenever we've had this notion of, oh well, we have this opportunity we're going to go chase, and we're going to go into this with this grand plan of like, oh, we're going to do this and this.
Mhm.
We end up recognizing that while we might have had success in the first step, the second thing, we just didn't even consider our plan. And I'll give you one very succinct examples. So without naming any specific technology, right, we bought some technologies that we're going to kind of go apply, and we did,
Yeah,
only to recognize that we made this all about technology without really connecting to, okay, well, how's the workflow coming together? How is somebody at the end of the value chain, how do they
yeah,
react with it? How do they connect with it? How is it impacting them? It's so differently. I think we inadvertently were chasing technology for technology's sake versus thinking about, okay, well, how is that changing and impacting somebody's life? And
big
that's
mistake.
been, yeah, that's been, I mean, I think we all kind of intuitively know that that is we shouldn't do that. That's kind of silly. But I think it's easy to get bogged down into the flow of things, and we end up chasing technologies only to realize
Mm.
that technology, believe it or not, guys, is the easier part of the equation, right? The
Yes.
harder part of the equation is, okay, well, how does it get adopted? How is it impacting, change process? How is it that somebody views it, wants to use it, and pulling on it? So it's kind of focusing on those elements, starting small, kind of experimental discovery versus grand plan, right? That's a bit of a mantra we've held, and
Mm.
it's although we might have known that, we've heard that, it's taken a few stub toes for us to kind of embed that into our
Yeah.
practice, and we still make some of those mistakes, but that's probably been the largest theme I would share.
Love it, Roshan. I would just add before I get Kevin's response. You know, I would submit to you that we've all chased technology for technology's sake, but the
Sure.
differentiator are those that are aware of when they've made that mistake, and those that are keep fooling themselves that they haven't made that mistake. So I appreciate how you've been very transparent with us because we've all done it. Kevin, your thoughts
Yeah.
there?
Fail fast, right? That's the whole idea. If you fail fast, then you learn even faster. So it's really important. And that's, once again, it's part of the culture. And when you do digital transformation, don't forget to bring the humans along.
That's right. That is right. Fail fast and know why you failed. Right. That
Yeah.
knowing that is so powerful. Okay, so we have touched on this a little bit, but I really want to get you, Roshan, to kind of address it more in full here, at least with some examples. Maybe how do you see artificial intelligence in particular impacting a couple areas here? Let's start with sustainability gains, whether it's at GP or what you see out in the market. How do you see AI advancing real outcomes there?
I think we have a couple of examples from our own work, of course, but I think in general, the the notion that adopting and applying AI is optional, I think, my personal opinion, that's flawed. Whether you do it
Mm.
or your competitor does it or somebody else does it, whoever adopts it is able to do, all the right things with it, is going to kind of lead the way. The question is, do we want to be, a kind of laggard in that equation, or do we
Mm.
want to
Yeah.
be experimenting and learning? Because the notion that you could just download this AI, AI is not so much as an app you download, right? You kind of have to embed that into your practice. And the saying that we kind of have is, digital transformation is less about the technology and it's about changing the hearts and mind. And that
Mm.
takes time, right? So, so,
Yeah.
so in
Yeah.
that regard, I think AI is going to continue playing a pretty significant role, and it already has for us. And I can give you a couple of examples, right? So if you consider waste, right? We
Hmm.
consume raw materials and we produce finished goods, but in that process, if we are not careful, we can, inadvertently create a lot of waste. Well, what we've been able to do through the lens of machine learning models and computer vision and empowering our operators, our colleagues to make better decisions, we can see things that would lead us to have more waste, right? And we're able to see that. Machine learning models flag us.
Yeah.
We can quickly analyze, well, what is it trying to tell us? Like, how do you translate that anomalous output from a model to, oh, well, this is what it's trying to tell me? And then you can implement that change almost in real time to be able to avoid waste. That's pretty powerful. And, I mean, you could think of that through the lens of sustainability, right? If we
Hmm.
are able to get, you know, um, if we're able to reduce waste, we consume less natural resources. We're able to pass off, the cost savings to our consumers. So there's a lot of value to be had from leveraging AI to help make better decisions.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And I would just add waste in all of its forms. I know you kind of focus at your example around um, like product waste or tangible waste, but I think of wasted time, wasted talent, wasted
Oh,
motion,
absolutely.
and how you're
Yep.
gaining from all of that, including the type of waste that is by reducing it is better for the planet. Kevin, your thoughts on some of the sustainability gains they're empowering there?
Yeah, I mean, sustainability actually helps you in many different ways. Less consumption of raw material, more product at the end of the manufacturing line, less resources that you have to leverage or use or expend in the production of product. This insight that the machine learning models provide and the artificial intelligence provide and that humans implement, it's critical to reaching sustainability goals, net zero carbon, and improving our entire environment.
That's right. That's right. Meeting the demand of the markets, the consumers, the whole ecosystem, and I
Yeah.
appreciate what both of y'all spoke to there. Um, Roshan, I was going to ask you this question, and looking back, you've baked in, I think, an element of this to almost all of your responses. So I'm fearful of asking it. It might sound redundant, but I'll give you a chance to dot an I or cross a T in case there's something that you haven't mentioned that you want to. So, it feels like to me that core to your approach as a leader and core to the the approach of your digital transformation strategy at GP, humans are in the middle of that. They're in the middle, and that's the North Star. So when you think of how AI empowers a human factor beyond all that you've already shared, is there anything else you want to add that's really important that maybe we haven't mentioned here today?
Uh, Maybe worth just double clicking on it, is the fact that is AI here to kind of replace people and what our colleagues do, or is it here to
Mm.
augment? And I think I firmly believe it is here to augment what we do and make it easier, right? So it's kind of the maybe a rather simplistic analogy, but if you consider the seatbelts in your car, or the fact that we have power brakes, right? They're not just purely
Hmm.
mechanical. There's like hydraulic and electricity that help makes it easier for you to brake, right? It's kind of like that thought process where the decisions that we as people make, every day with all the information coming at us at all times, we view AI as making it so either a lot of the simpler decisions that we may not have to make, or the volume of decisions kind of get simplified, or we have better information so we can make better long-term decisions that again
Yeah.
improve our lives, improve the communities that we operate in. I think AI is here to augment that, and worst case scenario, it frees us up to do some higher value things, right? So instead of just like consider today, when you have to go and you might spend 10 minutes Googling something, right?
Mm,
Or looking it up on the internet. Well, you could go to ChatGPT and ask a question, and even if it's not perfect answer, it gives you three-quarters of the answer within 5 seconds. Well, that's
yeah,
made you more efficient, so you can actually do something with that information versus just compiling all of that together. So it's kind of like that again, back to the this notion that AI is here to augment what we do, and I firmly believe that.
yeah,
Good stuff. Hey, Kevin. Speaking of one of the things that Roshan mentioned, I'm searching on Google and I'm seeing their Chat GPT like responses as it starts the experiment. That's been kind of cool. Having used Google for 25 years, it's kind of cool to
yeah,
see what they're doing there. Kevin, what'd you hear though in the bigger picture when it comes to again empowering the human factor and some of what Roshan describes as core to how he views it, especially in terms of augmentation. What'd you hear there, Kevin?
yeah. I mean, if you get assigned a task, many times you have to start at zero before you can get to the end. Start at the beginning in order to accomplish a goal. But artificial intelligence, it augments you. So you don't have to start at the beginning. You use AI so that you can start 25, 30, 50% into the task. You can get finished faster, or you can do something that beyond the task, or you can use less resources like time to accomplish the task or deliver the results much faster. So it's like it's great for everything. So why wouldn't you use AI in your job or to write a paper or to do research?
We
You just become better as a human.
Right. We could all use that head start for sure, no matter if we're in supply chain or any other element of
Yeah,
global
any other
trade.
industry,
I
vertical,
gotta
yes.
as before we start to wrap with Roshan, and I really enjoyed your perspective and responses and examples and maybe your how you view the world. I really have enjoyed this conversation with you, Roshan. But I got to go back, Kevin, to his
Mm.
automotive example because in this day and age, here living down in the Metro Atlanta area where we've got 115-degree days right around the corner, I'm glad that technology in our vehicles has come to the point of modern air conditioning because back in the day when I first started driving, my air conditioning started with rolling something down. Y'all are y'all with me? Did y'all?
Natural air conditioning.
That's right, way before where we are now. All right, so let's do this. Roshan, I want to talk leadership for a second, right before we wrap. We're going to make sure folks know how to connect with you here in just a second in case they want to talk shop or have you come in and speak to their teams or you name it. Um, so we have come, goodness gracious, a long way in the last few years. I think we've learned a ton. Not that we haven't always learned, but these last few
Yeah,
years, the silver lining is, gosh, the powerful business, leadership, and human lessons that we have all learned from going through the pandemic and coming out and seeing what's sticking, fortunately, and unfortunately, some of the things that aren't sticking because we have a short memory. But Roshan, as you think about that last few years, what's one of the biggest lessons that you learned or maybe was reemphasized to you when it comes to real effective leadership?
Um, it's the fact that it's a privilege, right? And you kind of have
mm,
to recognize that leadership it's a you're in a not just this kind of position of it's easily misconstrued as position of authority or power, and it's you have to recognize you're there to empower and help support the folks that you work with, and that kind of goes, folks who organizationally would roll up under you or the folks that you roll up under, right? I think
yeah,
it's recognizing that it's key. um and again, from my in my own shoes, it's early on, it's easy to feel like you are in this position of power, that you have the ability to go do all of these things. And you very quickly recognize that unless you have the ability to influence somebody for what they want to do and kind of build that
Hmm.
consensus, you can't just, go and kind of do what you think you want to do versus kind of leading the pack and part of the pack, right? And that's a privilege. That's something you earn. And it's as we've kind of gone through pandemic, coming out, working from home, out, and all the turnover, et cetera. That's, to me, that's something that I've spent considerable amount of time thinking and practicing. And there are days that don't always get it right, but I think that's a consistent message for sure.
I
Yeah.
love it.
No
Love it.
edicts.
Right. And it is a privilege. And I'll just kind of contrast that here briefly. Kevin, you and I both spent time in the military where you had a very formal um, um, uh,
Yeah,
organizational
strict.
structure, right? Right. Command.
Very, very
Yeah.
strict,
Yes. Very
rigid,
strict. Right. Very
rigid
strict. Chain of command.
organizational structure.
That's right. Chain of command. That was a phrase I was trying to think of, but very formal, very strict, and Roshan, your response reminded me of some of the best people I worked for during the military that also viewed it not because of the stripes on their sleeve or the insignia on their collars that they were an officer, but
Yeah.
because of how they viewed it as a privilege to lead the team that they were charged with. Kevin, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's about being that servant leader, right? Lift everyone up around you, that upside down triangle vision. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I agreed. Agreed. All right. Roshan and Kevin, what a great! I knew this was going to be
Oh,
a great
wow. This is
conversation
fun.
in the pre-show.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gotten a bit of a certification learning from both of y'all here today. A lot of good stuff. Hey, Roshan, for the folks out there listening or watching that want to connect and learn more or compare notes, you name it. What's the easiest way for folks to connect with you?
Probably the easiest one I would say is LinkedIn, right? I mean, I think everybody's kind of on it. It's easy to interact, mostly free, right? So I think that's probably
Yeah.
the preferred and easiest.
Wonderful. Outstanding. Roshan Shah, Vice President of Applied AI. Applied AI, as Kevin put emphasis on,
He
and
lived
products.
up to his title, isn't he?
No doubt. No doubt. And I'm sure we're just scraping the tip of the iceberg here today. But Roshan Shah, Vice President of Applied AI and Products at Georgia Pacific. Thank you so much for being here, Roshan.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the time and the conversation.
You bet. But before
Yeah,
we
it's
go,
fun.
Kevin, before we
Hmm.
go, we got to make sure folks know how to connect with you and your popular series, Digital Transformers, which folks can get wherever they get their podcasts. How can folks connect with you, Kevin?
Oh, yeah. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or on the X, right? I got a huge following on the X. And even more, it looks like Instagram is really growing up there. So I like that. But the number one place is on Digital Transformers, right? We put out a show periodically, and we have a lot. We have a live stream the second Monday of every month. So join us on the stream on Digital Transformers.
That's right. And you can find Digital Transformers wherever you get your podcast. And there's only one with the Kevin L. Jackson. So make sure you look at the
Thank
right one.
you. Yes.
All right. Folks, what a great conversation here today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Once again, big thanks to our guest, Roshan Shah with Georgia Pacific. Big thanks to Kevin. Always a pleasure to knock out these episodes with you, Kevin.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Thank you very much.
but most importantly, big thanks to our global audience out there, all of your support, all of your feedback as we go through this remarkable journey that we're on. Keep it coming. It's really helped us shape our programming, and we've got a big, big second half of the year. So, but here's most importantly, you've got to take one thing that Roshan or Kevin shared here today, put it into action, right? Your team will appreciate it. They're ready to do business differently. And gosh, aren't we all inspired by Roshan Shaw's approach here today? But act on it. No more lip service, right? The onus is on you, deeds, not words. So with all that said, on behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.